The night I realized my own daughter had been starving me. The turkey was already burning in the oven. I was standing in my kitchen on a cold November evening, the kind that seeps into your bones, when my granddaughter Harper opened the refrigerator and froze. The light spilled over her face, turning her pale. She did not close the door right away. She just stared. "Grandma," she said quietly, "why is there nothing in here?" I felt my chest tighten. Inside the fridge sat a carton of expired milk, half a stick of butter, and a plastic container with 2 spoonfuls of mashed potatoes hardened around the edges. Thanksgiving was tomorrow. My house smelled like smoke, not food. I tried to smile. "Oh, sweetheart, I was going to shop in the morning." She turned to look at me, really look at me. Her eyes flicked to my wrists, thinner than they used to be, to the way my sweater hung loose on my shoulders. She had my late husband Daniel's eyes, the kind that saw too much. "You promised Dad you were resting today," she said. "Did you even eat?" Before I could answer, the front door opened. Boots thudded across the hardwood floor. My daughter Melissa walked in with her usual confidence, her heels sharp and impatient. "Mom," she said, glancing at the oven, "you overcook everything. I told you I would handle dinner." Harper looked from her mother to me. Her mouth opened, then closed. She said nothing, but the silence stretched tight. Melissa opened the fridge herself, finally noticing what Harper had seen. Her face barely changed. "I told you not to waste money on groceries," she said calmly. "You barely eat anyway." That was the moment something inside me cracked. My name is Ruth Caldwell. I am 68 years old. I worked for 43 years as a payroll supervisor for a manufacturing company in Ohio. I raised 2 children mostly on my own after my husband Daniel died of a heart attack at 56. I paid off my mortgage. I saved carefully. I planned for a quiet retirement. And yet here I was, standing in my own kitchen, being scolded for buying food. Harper left the room without a word. I heard her go upstairs, the steps quick and uneven. Melissa turned to me, arms crossed. "You look tired, Mom. Did you forget to take your pills again?" I wanted to scream. Instead, I nodded. "Good," she said. "Tomorrow is important. My in-laws are coming. Try not to embarrass me." She kissed my cheek like a formality and left the kitchen, leaving the smell of burnt turkey and something far uglier behind. That night, lying in bed with my stomach aching, I replayed her words. "You barely eat anyway." As if hunger was a personality flaw. As if I had chosen this. What Harper did not know, what no one knew yet, was that 2 years earlier, after Daniel died, Melissa had convinced me to let her manage my finances. She said it was for my safety, for convenience, for family. She had a power of attorney. I had trust. I fell asleep wondering how a woman who once held my hand crossing busy streets had become someone who controlled whether I could eat. Downstairs, the oven timer beeped again. The next morning, I woke up dizzy. My bedroom was cold. I had turned the heat down weeks ago because Melissa said the utility bills were unnecessary. I sat on the edge of the bed until the room stopped spinning, then wrapped myself in a cardigan that used to belong to Daniel. Downstairs, voices floated through the house. Laughter. The sound of expensive shoes on my floor. Thanksgiving had arrived. I moved slowly, gripping the banister. The dining room was full. Melissa stood at the head of the table, radiant in a fitted dress, pouring wine for her husband's parents. Her husband Eric sat beside her, nodding along, silent as always. "Ruth," Melissa called out when she saw me. "There you are. Everyone was wondering if you were still asleep." Her mother-in-law smiled tightly. "We were just saying how generous Melissa has been, taking care of you like this." I felt a strange pressure behind my eyes. "I do my best," Melissa said, squeezing my shoulder a little too hard. "You know how forgetful Mom can be." Harper sat at the far end of the table. Her fork lay untouched. Her eyes stayed on me. We began to eat, plates piled high, ham, stuffing, green beans dripping with butter. The smell made my stomach twist painfully. Melissa filled every plate except mine. "Oh, Mom doesn't need much," she said lightly. Her doctor said small portions. No one questioned it. Halfway through the meal, Eric cleared his throat. He had been quiet all morning. "Melissa," he said, "maybe we should tell them now." She waved him off. "Not during dinner." "Tell us what?" his father asked. Melissa sighed, the picture of reluctant humility. Fine, since everyone is here. Mom and I made a decision. She turned to me, smiling in that way that always meant I was about to lose something. We decided to move the rest of Mom's savings into a trust for long-term care, just in case. My fork slipped from my hand. You what? I whispered. She laughed gently. Don't get upset. It's just paperwork. You don't need access to it anymore. You have me. Across the table, Harper stood up so fast her chair scraped loudly against the floor. What savings? She asked. Melissa frowned. Harper, sit down. No, Harper said. Grandma told me Grandpa left her money. A lot of it. Why does she not have food then? The room went silent. Melissa turned red. Don't be dramatic. I'm not, Harper said, her voice shaking. I checked Grandma's bank app last night. She has less than $200. Eric went pale. Melissa stared at Harper like she had betrayed her. You went through my phone, she snapped. I went through Grandma's, Harper said, because she almost fainted this morning. I felt the room tilt. That's when I realized this was no longer just about money. It was about control. About erasing me, slowly, politely, under the guise of care. Melissa opened her mouth to speak again. But this time, Harper beat her to it. I already called Uncle James, she said, and a lawyer. They are coming. Melissa laughed, sharp and nervous. You think you can do that to your own mother. Harper looked at her, tears in her eyes. You already did. The doorbell rang, and I knew, with a clarity that frightened me, that whatever walked through that door was going to change everything. When the doorbell rang, my heart did not race. It slowed. That terrified me more than panic ever could. Melissa stiffened beside the table, her smile frozen in place like a crack in porcelain. Eric stood halfway from his chair, unsure whether to sit back down or intervene. His parents exchanged glances, the kind married couples share when they realize something is very wrong, but decide to stay quiet. I did not move. My legs felt weak, but my spine felt strangely straight. Harper walked to the door before anyone could stop her. I heard voices in the foyer. A man's voice, calm and measured. Another familiar one, lower, edged with anger. Then my younger brother James stepped into the dining room. Ruth, he said softly when he saw me. Jesus, you look... He stopped himself, jaw tightening. Behind him stood a woman in a navy coat, her hair pulled back neatly, a leather folder tucked under her arm. I'm Clara Whitman, she said, estate attorney. Melissa recovered enough to scoff. This is ridiculous. James, you always overreact. James ignored her completely. He came to my side and crouched so we were eye level. When was the last time you had a full meal? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. That was answer enough. Clara cleared her throat. Mrs. Caldwell, do you currently understand who controls your financial accounts? Melissa stepped forward. I do, with legal authority. Clara nodded. Yes, under a durable power of attorney signed 2 years ago, which I have reviewed. What concerns me is how that authority has been used. Eric shifted uncomfortably. Harper handed Clara her phone. I took screenshots, bank transfers, regular withdrawals, and payments to a company called Northview Development. Clara flipped through the images, her expression hardening. Melissa, she said, is that your husband's company? Eric inhaled sharply. Melissa crossed her arms. We invested some of Mom's money. For growth. You bought a vacation property in Aspen, Clara replied calmly. In your husband's name. The room erupted. That's not true, Eric said, too fast. James stood. You used Daniel's money to buy yourself a mountain house while your mother ate nothing but toast. Melissa snapped. She didn't need it. She's old. What good does money do her now? The words hit me like ice water. Old. Disposable. I finally found my voice. It does good when I'm hungry. Silence fell again. Thick. Unavoidable. Clara turned to me gently. Ruth, did you authorize any of this? No. Did Melissa ever explain these transactions to you? No. Did she restrict your access to your own funds? I nodded. Clara closed her folder. Then we have a problem. And Melissa, you have liability. Melissa laughed, but her eyes were wet. You're taking her side over your own sister. James glared. You stopped being my sister when you decided Mom didn't deserve dignity. Harper was crying openly now, Clara continued, voice steady. I am filing an emergency petition to revoke the power of attorney effective immediately. There will also be a forensic accounting review. Eric sat down heavily. Melissa looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time in years. You would do this to me. I thought of cold nights, empty cabinets, shame. You did this to me, I said. Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Not for us, but they sounded like a warning anyway. Clara packed her folder. Ruth, you'll stay with James tonight. Tomorrow we go to court. Melissa lunged forward. You can't just take her. James stepped between us. Watch me. As I was guided toward the hallway, I looked back once. Melissa stood alone at the table, surrounded by food she had denied me. Her face was pale now, and for the first time, she looked afraid. James drove me to his house that night. A small ranch with yellow lights glowing warmly through the windows. I cried the entire way. Not loud sobs, just quiet tears that slipped down my face without asking permission. James did not speak. He handed me tissues at stoplights and kept his eyes on the road. At his house, his wife Linda wrapped me in a blanket and sat me at the kitchen table. She placed a bowl of chicken soup in front of me, steam rising gently. Take your time, she said. The first spoonful made my stomach cramp, but I kept going. Every swallow felt like a small rebellion. That night, I slept in their guest room. The heat turned up too high, the bed soft. I woke twice, disoriented, expecting to hear Melissa's voice correcting me. It never came. In the morning, Clara met us at the courthouse. The building smelled like old paper and disinfectant. My hands shook as I signed documents revoking the power of attorney. Each signature felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Melissa did not attend the emergency hearing. Her lawyer did. The judge, a woman with steel gray hair, listened quietly as Clara laid out the facts. Neglect, financial exploitation, unauthorized transfers. When Clara finished, the judge looked at me. Mrs. Caldwell, are you safe right now? Yes, I said. Do you wish to regain full control of your assets? Yes. Then it is granted. The gavel fell. Just like that, the control Melissa had wrapped around my life snapped. But the story was far from over. That afternoon, Eric called James. He wants to talk, James said grimly. I knew what that meant. We met Eric at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Melissa was not with him. He looked smaller without her. His shoulders slumped, his tie loosened. She didn't tell me how bad it was, he said immediately. I thought your mother was fine. You signed the documents, James said coldly. Eric swallowed. Melissa convinced me. She said it was temporary. Temporary hunger, I said. He flinched. I'm selling the Aspen place, he said quietly. Clara already contacted my lawyer. I didn't know it was illegal. Ignorance is not innocence, James replied. Eric nodded. I know. The money will be returned. All of it. And Melissa? I asked. He hesitated. We are separating. I felt no triumph. Just a deep, aching tiredness. That evening, Harper came to James' house. She ran to me and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner, she whispered. You saw it in time, I said. Later, as I lay in bed, warm and full, I stared at the ceiling. I had spent my life believing motherhood meant sacrifice without limit. But tonight, for the first time, I wondered something new. What happens when the woman who gave everything finally takes something back? Outside, snow began to fall. And somewhere in that quiet, I felt the beginning of something dangerous. Hope. Hope is a dangerous thing when it comes late in life. It does not arrive gently. It does not whisper. It storms in and rearranges everything you thought you understood about yourself, about love, about loyalty. For me, it arrived 3 days after the judge restored my financial control, wrapped in an envelope marked confidential. Clara handed it to me at her office. She did not sit down. Ruth, she said, I need you to read this carefully. Inside were bank statements I had never seen. Not summaries, details, dates, amounts, destinations. I felt sick almost immediately. Over the course of 2 years, Melissa had transferred more than $100,000 from my accounts. Not just for the Aspen property. There were luxury hotel charges in Miami, jewelry purchases, regular payments to a private school I did not recognize. That's Harper's old school, I murmured. Clara nodded. Melissa moved her without telling you. Tuition was paid entirely from your savings. I closed my eyes. I remembered the night Harper cried because she had to leave her friends. Melissa said the tuition was too expensive, said sacrifices had to be made, just not by her. There's more, Clara continued. She slid another page forward. Northview Development is not just Eric's company. Melissa is listed as a silent partner. My hands trembled. So when she said she was investing my money, she was laundering it through the company, Clara finished. Legally speaking, it's embezzlement. And elder financial abuse carries enhanced penalties. I sat back, my chest tight. I don't want her in prison, I said automatically. Clara studied me. Ruth, I'm not asking what you want to do yet. I'm asking what you're willing to tolerate. The words lingered. That afternoon, Melissa called me for the first time since Thanksgiving. Her voice sounded raw. Mom, please, we need to talk. No, I said. She inhaled sharply. You can't just shut me out. I'm your daughter. You stopped acting like my daughter a long time ago. I hung up before she could respond. That night, alone in James' guest room, I thought about every moment I had ignored my own instincts. Every time I had chosen peace over truth. I thought about Daniel, about the promises we made to protect each other. I realized something then. If I stayed silent now, this would not end with me. Melissa would do this again, to someone else, maybe even to Harper one day. The next morning, I called Clara. Proceed, I said. Melissa was served the following Tuesday. I did not watch. I did not need to. James told me later that she collapsed onto the porch when the papers were handed to her, that she screamed my name, that Eric stood behind her, frozen, as if he were watching a stranger unravel. By Thursday, the story had reached extended family. My phone rang constantly. Cousins I had not spoken to in years suddenly wanted context, opinions, explanations. I stopped answering. Instead, I focused on rebuilding the parts of my life that had quietly eroded. I went grocery shopping alone for the first time in months. I took my time. I touched the fruit. I stood in the aisle deciding between brands simply because I could. At the checkout, I cried. The cashier pretended not to notice. At home, I cooked meals Daniel used to love. I turned the heat up without asking permission. I bought new slippers, small things, revolutionary things. 2 weeks later, Clara called with an update. Melissa has frozen her personal accounts, she said, but the court granted a lien on the Aspen property and Northview assets. We will recover most of what was taken. And Melissa herself. Clara paused. She's preparing a defense, claiming she acted in your best interest. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. She starved me. Yes, Clara said, and the evidence supports that. That evening, Harper came to visit. She looked older somehow, quieter. She sat across from me at the kitchen table. Mom wants to see you, she said finally. I stirred my tea. I know. Are you going to? I don't know, I said honestly. Harper nodded. She twisted her hands. She's saying terrible things about you, that you're confused, that James manipulated you. I met my granddaughter's eyes. Do you believe that? She shook her head fiercely. No, I saw the fridge. I saw you. Tears slid down her cheeks. I'm scared, Grandma. I reached across the table and took her hands. I am too, I admitted. But fear doesn't mean we stop. A month later, the deposition was scheduled. I sat across from Melissa in a conference room that smelled like coffee and tension. She looked thinner, her hair unwashed. Her eyes avoided mine. Do you acknowledge transferring funds without informing your mother? The attorney asked. Yes. Do you acknowledge restricting her access to food and utilities? Melissa glanced at me then. Just once. I didn't think it was that bad, she said softly. I felt something break open inside me. It was never bad for you, I said. That was the problem. The room went silent. Outside, winter pressed against the windows. Inside, I felt something shift. I was no longer the woman waiting to be cared for. I was the woman deciding what justice would look like. And Melissa finally understood that I was no longer afraid of her. That realization, more than any court order, was what truly terrified her. The deposition cracked something open that could not be sealed again. After that day, Melissa stopped calling. Not out of respect, out of strategy. Her lawyers advised silence, and for the first time in her life, she listened to someone other than herself. The quiet should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like standing in the middle of a field after a storm, waiting to see what else had been destroyed. I moved back into my house at the beginning of January. James wanted me to stay longer. Linda offered to convert the guest room permanently, but I needed to go home. I needed to walk through every room Melissa had controlled and remind myself that the walls still belonged to me. The house smelled stale when I unlocked the door. Not dirty, just unused, like it had been holding its breath. I opened the refrigerator first. It was full. James had stocked it before I arrived. Milk, eggs, fresh vegetables, soup containers neatly labeled. I stood there longer than necessary, my hand on the door, grounding myself in the hum of the appliance. You are safe, I told myself. That night, I slept in my own bed for the first time in months. I did not sleep well. I dreamed of locks turning, of keys snapping in half. 3 days later, Clara came by with more updates. Northview development is under investigation, she said. Not just because of your case. There are irregularities. Melissa was not as careful as she thought. I felt a chill. What kind of irregularities? Inflated invoices, shell accounts, money cycling back into personal expenses. So I'm not the only one. Clara met my eyes. No, and that changes things. The case was no longer just about me. Prosecutors were interested now. Elder financial abuse had opened the door, but corporate fraud was pulling it off its hinges. That evening, I received a message from an unknown number. You destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. I knew it was Melissa. I did not respond. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine. I had not done that in years. Not because I did not want to, because Melissa said alcohol interacted with my medication. The wine tasted sharp and freeing. 2 weeks later, Harper called me crying. They questioned me, she said. About Mom, about Dad, about the money. I sat down hard. Who questioned you? People from the district attorney's office. They were nice, but they asked if I ever saw Mom take money from you. My chest tightened. I never told you anything, did I? No, Harper said. But I remembered things. Like Mom always checking your receipts. Like you saying you weren't hungry when we visited. I didn't understand then. You do now. She sniffed. Dad told me to be careful what I say. I closed my eyes. Listen to me, I said slowly. You tell the truth. Nothing more, nothing less. No one can fault you for that. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time. The next call came 2 days later, from Eric. I almost did not answer. Ruth, he said quietly. They're charging her. I said nothing. Multiple counts, he continued. Fraud, exploitation. She might lose everything. I thought of the woman who had once begged me to watch Harper so she could finish her degree. The daughter who had kissed my cheek while emptying my account. I should have stopped her, Eric said. I saw the signs. I didn't want to fight. Neither did I replied. And look where that got us. He exhaled shakily. I'm sorry. I did not comfort him. After the call, I walked into my bedroom and opened the drawer where I kept Daniel's watch. The one thing Melissa had never touched. I fastened it around my wrist. I was done waiting. The trial date was set for early April. I did not expect to testify. Clara warned me it might not be necessary. The paper trail was extensive. Witnesses were lining up. Former employees of Northview had started talking, but Melissa demanded a jury. She wanted to be seen. On the morning of the first day, I sat in the gallery with James on one side and Harper on the other. My hands rested in my lap. Steady. Calm. Melissa walked in wearing a gray suit she had clearly bought for this purpose. Her hair was pulled back severely. She did not look at me. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically. Dates, amounts, lies stacked carefully on top of one another. When they showed photos of the Aspen property on a large screen, I heard murmurs ripple through the room. A vacation home, purchased with money meant for groceries and medication. Melissa's attorney painted her as overwhelmed. A daughter trying to manage too much. A family disagreement blown out of proportion. Then came the witnesses. A former accountant from Northview testified that Melissa instructed him to code transfers as operational expenses. A neighbor testified that I had asked for spare meals during the winter. The grocery clerk from my local store described how often I came in with coupons and left with almost nothing. I stared straight ahead. Halfway through the third day, the prosecutor called me. My legs felt heavy as I walked to the stand. I raised my hand, swore to tell the truth. "Mrs. Caldwell," the prosecutor said gently, "can you describe your relationship with your daughter prior to these events?" I took a breath. "I trusted her," I said. "Completely." "Did she ever explain how your money was being used?" "No." "Did she restrict your access to basic necessities?" "Yes." "How did that make you feel?" The courtroom was silent. "Like I was disappearing," I said, slowly. "Like my life was being edited out, one decision at a time." I felt Harper's hand tighten around mine as I stepped down. Melissa testified last. She cried. She blamed stress. She said she loved me, that she never meant harm. Then the prosecutor asked one question. "If you loved your mother, why did you never once ask if she was eating?" Melissa opened her mouth. No answer came. The jury deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, I stood, guilty on all counts. The sound was not loud. It did not crash. It settled. Melissa sank into her chair. Sentencing would come later. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I walked past them without stopping. In the parking lot, Harper hugged me hard. "You were brave," she whispered. "No," I said softly. I was honest. That night, alone in my house, I cooked dinner and set the table for one. I ate slowly, deliberately. And as I washed the dishes, I understood something with absolute clarity. Revenge was never about punishment. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself I had been taught to surrender. And the final chapter of that reclamation had not yet been written. Sentencing took longer than I expected. Weeks passed between the verdict and the date the judge would decide Melissa's fate. In those weeks, something strange happened. The world kept moving, and so did I. I woke early every morning and made myself breakfast. Real breakfast. Eggs, toast, fruit. I took my vitamins. I walked around the neighborhood, slowly at first, then with more confidence. Neighbors waved. Some stopped me to say they were glad to see me out again. None asked questions. They did not need answers. They had seen enough. James wanted me to stay busy. He suggested classes at the community center. Gardening. Yoga for seniors. I tried painting instead. I was terrible at it, but I liked the feeling of color under my fingers. It reminded me that I still had choices. Melissa did not contact me. Her attorney did, once, asking if I would consider writing a statement requesting leniency. I said no. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I refused to soften the truth. Harper came over often. She was quieter than before, but stronger somehow. Watching her grow through this broke my heart and healed it at the same time. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch drinking tea, she asked the question I knew was coming. "Do you hate her?" I looked at the yard, at the bare branches just beginning to show buds. "No," I said slowly. "Hate takes too much energy. I don't have that much left to waste." "Do you forgive her?" That was harder. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else. It's something you build inside yourself, brick by brick. I'm still laying the foundation. Harper nodded, as if she understood. The day before sentencing, Eric called again. "She wants to see you," he said. "Just once, before tomorrow." I closed my eyes. "Why?" He hesitated. "I think she's finally afraid. Not of prison, of being nothing to you." That landed heavier than I expected. I told him I would think about it. That night, I barely slept. I kept seeing Melissa at different ages. The little girl who climbed into my bed during thunderstorms. The teenager who slammed doors and still wanted me to wait up. The woman who looked at an empty refrigerator and felt nothing. By morning, my decision was made. I met Melissa in a small room at the detention center. She looked smaller than I remembered. No makeup, her hands folded tightly in her lap. When she saw me, she stood up, then sat back down, unsure. "Mom," she whispered. I remained standing. "I am not here to comfort you," I said. "I am here to tell you the truth." She nodded quickly, tears already forming. I loved you, Melissa. I still do, in the way a mother loves. But you used that love as a tool. You counted on it to protect you from consequences. I never thought you'd let it go this far, she said. Neither did I. She started to cry in earnest then. I was so afraid of ending up like you, she admitted. Dependent, old, invisible. I leaned forward. And so you made me invisible first. She covered her face. I stood. I will not ask the judge to be lenient, but I will not ask him to be cruel either. What happens next is between you and the life you chose. As I walked out, I felt lighter. Not absolved, but unburdened. The next day, the judge sentenced Melissa to several years in prison, followed by restitution and supervised release. She did not look at me as they led her away. I did not look back. Life after the sentence was quieter than I expected. No more court dates. No more phone calls from lawyers. The storm had passed, leaving behind a strange stillness. I learned quickly that stillness can be just as challenging as chaos. There is no one to blame, no urgency to distract you from yourself. I had to decide who I was without crisis. The restitution payments began within 2 months. Money transferred into my account regularly. I watched the balance grow, not with joy, but with a sense of restored order. It was not about wealth. It was about repair. I met with a financial advisor recommended by Clara, a woman my age with sharp eyes and gentle manners. She asked me what I wanted the rest of my life to look like. That question stunned me. I had planned for survival, not vision. I want to feel useful, I said finally, and safe. We created a plan. Monthly income, emergency reserves, a small discretionary fund just for pleasure. She smiled when she explained that part. Pleasure is not frivolous, Ruth. It's preventative care. I believed her. Harper graduated that spring. I sat in the front row, my heart full, clapping until my hands hurt. When she crossed the stage, she looked straight at me and smiled. Not the polite smile of obligation, the real one. Afterward, she hugged me and whispered, "I want to study law, like Clara." I laughed through tears. The world has no idea what's coming. Eric moved away, took a job in another state. We exchanged a final, awkward goodbye. There was nothing left to say. James and Linda visited every Sunday. Sometimes we talked about Melissa, sometimes we did not. I stopped feeling guilty for the silence. One evening in early summer, I found myself cleaning out the hall closet. Old coats, shoes I no longer wore, boxes I hadn't opened in years. At the back, I found a folder. My will. I sat on the floor and read it carefully. Names, percentages, decisions made long ago by a woman who believed love meant equal distribution, no matter the cost. The next morning, I called Clara. "I want to change it," I said. She did not ask why. We rewrote everything. Carefully, thoughtfully. Not out of spite, but out of clarity. Harper was included. Charities I believed in. Provisions for my own care. When Clara asked about Melissa, I paused. "Leave her something symbolic," I said. Enough to acknowledge she existed in my life. Not enough to pretend nothing happened. Clara nodded. That's wisdom. On a quiet afternoon, weeks later, I sat in my garden watching the flowers bloom. I thought about revenge, about justice, about karma. What I had learned surprised me. The most satisfying justice was not watching Melissa fall. It was watching myself stand. If you are listening to this story and something in it feels familiar, I want you to know this. It is not too late to reclaim your life. Not at 55, not at 68, not ever. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like it, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories about truth, betrayal, and the quiet power of starting again. Because sometimes, the greatest revenge is simply refusing to disappear. I thought the story had ended. That was my mistake. 3 months after I updated my will, I received a letter with no return address. The envelope was thin, the handwriting unfamiliar but careful, as if the person who wrote it had paused before every word. I knew who it was before I opened it. Melissa. My hands did not shake. That surprised me. I carried the letter to the kitchen, sat at the table, where I now ate every meal without fear, and slid it open slowly. "Mom, I don't know if you will read this. I don't know if I deserve to be heard. But there are things I need to say without lawyers or judges or defenses. Prison is not what frightens me the most. Silence is. Being stripped of everything that once defined me has forced me to see myself without excuses. I keep replaying moments I dismissed, your weight loss, the empty fridge, the way you stopped asking for things. I told myself you were fine because it was easier than admitting I was hurting you. I wanted to be powerful. I was terrified of being small. And I became something worse. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am not asking for money or help or visits. I just need you to know that I finally understand what I did. Every night, I dream of you, standing in the doorway. Not angry, just disappointed. That hurts more than any sentence ever could. I am sorry, Mom. Truly. Melissa. I folded the letter and sat in silence. I did not cry. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Not relief, not rage, a quiet acknowledgement. As if a long-delayed truth had finally arrived at the right address. I did not write back, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I understood something crucial in that moment. Her healing could not come from me, just as mine could not come from her apology. That afternoon, I went for a long walk. The leaves were turning, autumn again, a full circle. I passed the grocery store, where I once stood counting coins. I passed the bank, where my account now sat secure, untouched by anyone else's hands. I passed my own reflection in a window, and barely recognized the woman looking back. She stood straighter. Her eyes were clearer. She was no longer waiting for permission. That evening, Harper came by with news. She had been accepted into a summer internship at a legal aid clinic. They worked with elderly clients, financial abuse cases, people like me. I hugged her, overwhelmed. You turned something awful into purpose, I told her. No, Grandma, she said softly. You did. Later that night, I took out Daniel's watch and placed it beside my bed. I spoke to him quietly, the way I always had. I did not protect our money at first, I said, but I protected our dignity in the end. The house was silent, warm, full. For the first time, I slept without dreaming. On my 70th birthday, I hosted a dinner. Not a performance, not an obligation, a choice. The table was long and imperfect, borrowed from James. The food was simple but abundant. Roast chicken, vegetables, bread still warm from the oven. Laughter filled the room, not the strained kind, but the kind that comes when no one is pretending. Harper sat beside me, James and Linda across the table. Neighbors, friends I had reconnected with. People who knew me now, not just who I used to be. There was an empty chair. Not for Melissa, for the version of myself I had lost. Halfway through the meal, James raised his glass. To Ruth, who reminds us that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers, enough. I smiled, my eyes wet. After everyone left, I stayed at the table alone for a while. I did not rush to clean. I let the moment linger. I thought about the word. Revenge. It never meant what I thought it did. Revenge was not watching my daughter fall from grace. It was not courtrooms or verdicts or sentences. Revenge was waking up without fear. Revenge was opening my refrigerator and seeing it full. Revenge was being believed. Revenge was choosing myself without apology. I know there are women listening to this story who recognize parts of their own lives in mine. Women who have been minimized, managed, quietly erased by the very people they trusted most. If that is you, hear this clearly. You are not too old to start again. You are not selfish for wanting dignity. You are not wrong for demanding truth. Sometimes karma does not arrive as thunder. Sometimes it arrives as clarity. And clarity changes everything. If this story spoke to you, please take a moment to like it, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. Because justice does not always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like a woman standing in her own kitchen, breathing freely, finally whole.